we are at that point where we know it's there, we know it's happening, it has been germinating under the soil, it is alive. This Christ consciousness is very alive on the planet, and we are in a place of just needing to trust and validate and support with our enthusiasm the continued growth and expansion of that consciousness. And we'll see that more and more, instead of creating from that victim or that effect space where there's a lot of effort, there's a lot of reaction, there's a lot of suffering. And we shift to this internal space where we're creating from really our creative power as beings, as spiritual beings. And it's truly inspirational. Everyone has their role to play. But if you're also one who's been kind of quietly watching and hoping and waiting and wondering, is it ever going to change? Just know that the external reality changes when the internal reality has shifted. Hello and welcome to the Higher Vibe. I'm your host, Jean Roorda, and today I'm sharing with you part 2 of my talk on the return of the Christ. What does that mean? If you heard my previous podcast share on part 1 of Return of the Christ, you will have a great deal of introduction to what I'm sharing with you today. And you'll know that the Return of the Christ, just to summarize my previous share, is not about the return of a person, so to speak. It's not about, getting rescued by an external savior, but by really recognizing the Christ within each of us and seeing that out in the world more and more, seeing that awareness growing out in the world, seeing this return of what we could call Christ consciousness, the awareness of the oneness of beingness. And it does tie into Jesus, though. It is related to Jesus in the sense that Jesus was the Christ, right? We call him Jesus Christ. Jesus the Christ. Jesus was a soul who really embodied and demonstrated and fully lived and incarnated that awareness of the oneness of beingness. And he taught through demonstrating that awareness of the oneness of beingness. And he really planted a seed, many seeds. In the time when Jesus was incarnated, there was this seeding of Christ consciousness on the planet. And Jesus was the great soul who got to lead the way to really establish a new level of awareness and energy on the planet that had not existed before. And there have been many masters of wisdom, many souls who've incarnated great wisdom and understanding and spiritual awareness onto the planet. But the reason we call Jesus the Christ was that was an initiation for humanity that he brought on this path of awakening. He really initiated that for humanity as a whole. And so in that context, the return of the Christ is really, we're starting to see all those seeds that were planted in the consciousness of humanity begin to grow more above the soil. So we know that plants grow really slowly in terms of if you're just sitting there watching a plant grow. You might get impatient and walk away before you even notice any kind of change, right? But over time, if you were to have a time-lapse camera or something, you would see, oh yeah, there's the growth of the plant. You can speed it up and see the growth happening. And in an even longer context, in an even longer time span, we have this growing of the consciousness of oneness, the Christ consciousness, that for the past 2,000 or so years has been kind of growing and germinating underneath the soil, so to speak, quietly within the hearts and minds of humanity. And perhaps not within every heart and mind, but within those souls who that consciousness was seeded, right, and sparked during that time of Jesus, and by the many other awakened souls who have walked the planet and seeded that wisdom as well. And so as that awareness has been germinating, so to speak, quietly growing within the hearts and minds of many souls, and from there spreading to others, right? So this is a very fertile soil that this consciousness was planted in the sense that Each soul that Jesus touched during that time that he was incarnated as the being that we know as Jesus, each soul that he touched, each soul that was awakened during that time, maybe not fully awakened, but really sparked quite an opening of consciousness, right, during that time. And each of those souls then grew, the light within them grew brighter and brighter, and each of those souls touched many lives as well. And so that's what's kind of been germinating under the soil of humanity, with quietly again within the hearts and minds of humanity for these past couple thousands of years. And now we're just at this, like, maybe it's just starting to break out of the soil, right? That very exciting time. If you've ever planted seeds and watched them grow, there's this really exciting, for me, point where it's just breaking out of the soil, right? You're like, oh, there it is. It's really growing. It's just coming out. And so I believe that's the point in this analogy. That's the point that humanity's at right now, where these seeds, and it's more than just one, but in that context of the analogy, that seed of consciousness that was planted is just breaking through the soil. It's just been germinating, right, for thousands of years. And so we might look around and say, well, there's no fruit yet, right? Where is this? We don't see the external demonstration of this yet in the world. It doesn't yet look like on a global mass level of humanity that we're really fully living and embodying Christ consciousness, right? But we're at the beginning of this time of the Great Awakening. That's another way that we could describe this return of the Christ. It's just this time of the Great Awakening. And that is the time that we're stepping into right now. We've been in this build up, and we're just stepping into this new time of the Great Awakening. And so as that seed that has germinated and grown beneath the soil is just beginning to burst forth into the light, it's going to begin to grow more and more and more. And of course, first that stable stem is growing. And what that looks like in the world right now is really that gathering of all of that life force beneath the soil, right? The roots, gathering all of that and starting to just break forth into the world. And what that looks like in humanity is, for so many of us who have been quietly growing that awareness within our hearts and minds of the oneness of beingness, we're now ready and able to share that, to bring forth that wisdom out into the world and to tap into that nourished roots that we've been growing for so long and let that grow this tall, sturdy, grounded stem that then begins to sprout leaves and eventually fruit as well. So it's a very exciting time, this time of the Great Awakening. And I want to talk about, again, what that looks like with this analogy of the plant that's growing, in terms of what are we looking for out in the world to really demonstrate, oh yeah, this has grown into a full plant. Let's say it's a fruiting tree, right? And we're just starting to see that little stem growing that's going to grow into the trunk of the tree and start to sprout branches and leaves and eventually fruit. We don't want to rush the process. It happens in its own natural way. And so sometimes when we look out in the world and think, well, where's the fruits that we're looking for? We don't see systems that really demonstrate that Christ consciousness yet, right? We still are operating in these old falling apart systems that are based on competition, scarcity, just not enoughness, right? So it looks like a lot of greed and a lot of polarity in terms of where abundance is, right? It looks like the haves and the have-nots, and a lot of people suffering with not having enough and just working all the time just to barely get by. So obviously out in the world, we're not seeing this fruit of the spirit, so to speak, this demonstration of that Great Awakening. But we're just at the beginning of it. We haven't seen those fruits, haven't come to fruition yet, but we know that they're growing. And here and there, we even see a little bit of a, leaves sprouting and some buds maybe even forming. It's all there. All that potential is within that fully nurtured root system and that life force that's sprouting up. So be part of that life force that's sprouting up, that life force that's moving above the soil out into the world now is full of unlimited potential. It's full of so much creativity, so much inspiration and enthusiasm for creating totally new systems in the world, totally new ways of being together as humanity that come from this knowing, this understanding, and this embodiment of Christ consciousness, which is the awareness of the oneness of beingness. When we are aware of our inner oneness with the all that is, we live in such a way that there's a sense of caring for the wellness of others, for the wellness of the whole, in terms of how we relate to each other, to all living things, how we relate to the animals and the plants, the earth itself. And that's what we're seeing a shift in right now. I already see it out in the world. So many more people deeply care about how we're treating the earth, deeply care about how we're treating our own bodies, right? That's demonstrated when we aren't treating the earth well, when we're poisoning the air, water, and soil. Of course, it comes back to our own bodies because we're not separate from the earth. So then we end up poisoning ourselves. And so many more people are aware of that and speaking up and saying, hey, this is not okay. We need to stop this, right? And it might seem in this process where, again, the timeline is so drawn out, it might seem like, oh my gosh, I've been recognizing the need to change this for so long, right? It might feel like your whole lifetime you've been aware of the need to stop deforestation or stop poisoning the water or stop using pesticides or all these ways that the earth is being harmed and mistreated. It might feel like you've been aware of that for so long, and is it ever going to change? And is there anything you can really do? And so many people do take up the burden of fighting against it in many ways. And that's beautiful. Everyone has their role to play. But if you're also one who's been kind of quietly watching and hoping and waiting and wondering, is it ever going to change? Just know that the external reality changes when the internal reality has shifted. And so it's really this time of that internal reality shifting for more and more people. And when we reach that, sometimes it's called that tipping point, when there's enough people on the planet whose internal reality is coming from that space of the awareness of the oneness of beingness, coming from that space of caring for the whole and recognizing our interconnectedness on this physical level and recognizing the need to love and care for the earth and love and care for each other. That's when the external reality starts to shift. And it's not overnight, even though we would love, a lot of us would love for it to be just like, boom, let's all change overnight. It's about being patient with the process and trusting and knowing that it is transforming. The external reality is transforming. But again, that's where we're wanting those fruits to already be appearing on the tree. And we're just really at that point of this burst of life force coming out of the soil and the strong, sturdy stem that turns into the strong, sturdy trunk of the tree is just beginning to grow above the surface. So we are at that point where we know it's there, we know it's happening, it has been germinating under the soil. It is alive. We're alive. This Christ consciousness is very alive on the planet. And we are in a place of just needing to trust and validate and support with our enthusiasm the continued growth and expansion of that consciousness. And we'll see that more and more. And this is an exciting time because just like with the plant, there's this burst of life where it kind of appears to grow a little bit quicker during that time where the main stem or trunk of the plant is growing above the surface. There's this just shooting up, right? And then for a while it might seem slower as leaves unfurl, but we're really at that burst, that quickening space. So it's a very exciting time. So I invite and encourage you to just witness how that looks like for you individually. It's very easy for us to look out in the world and maybe get a little disheartened if we're focused on the stuff that's still falling apart and crumbling away. But I encourage you to look within. How is this showing up for you as an individual? How is this burst of life and new awakening showing up in your life? What does that look like? Have you seen any shift or impetus to shift how you relate to others, both in your inner circle, your close family and friends, and in the greater circle of humanity that we're all very connected to, right? If we're online, we can be connected to anyone, anywhere on the planet. And just in our own awareness on that telepathic level, we can be very connected to anyone, anywhere. So how does this new burst, this great awakening that we're at the beginning of here, how does that look in terms of what you've been aware of in your personal relationships? Has there been a shift in how you perceive others? Has there been an interest in shifting that, right? It doesn't have to look perfect. It's just, are you noticing more awareness around how you would like to treat others, or how you have been treating others, or how you've been treating yourself, or what kinds of ways you've been showing up for yourself and others? This great awakening first is just a burst of expanded awareness, right? So we might be noticing things about ourselves that we didn't notice before. There's more light coming in, so that we might be really noticing more ways that we've been behaving or speaking or thinking, right? All those subconscious thought processes that have been driving our behaviors under the surface for so long, more and more of that is coming to the surface of our awareness. So I invite you to just notice that. What kinds of awarenesses have you been having about yourself in relationship to others? And let this return of the Christ, so to speak, let this great awakening, this burst of more awareness, more light, bring those to the surface and allow yourself to trust the process. Because sometimes when things first come to the surface, it's scary, or it's messy, or it's like, oh, I don't know if I want that to come to the surface. Do I really want to see that? There can be some resistance that comes up with that in that process. There can be some discomfort, I'm not so sure about this, right? So I invite you to just give that all space to be. There's really nothing that you need to do to fix or solve the new awarenesses that are coming up. It's more about being present with awareness and allowing that energy to move, allowing that energy to completely come to the surface and release. And it is really just with your presence and your willingness to make a decision to let that go, that this time of the Great Awakening can and will be deeply transformative for everyone that chooses to go along for the ride. And that's all it is. It's going along for the ride. It's a surrender, right? And instead of a doingness. There's so much about the return of the Christ that I see as the Great Awakening is the great surrender. It's the great letting go. It's the great allowing of what is to be, right? That what is that great light and love that is the oneness of beingness. And in this Great Awakening, all that there is to, quote, do on this internal level is to let that be, to give that space, to allow that. And that's a very receptive space, right? You're just allowing isn't about doing, it's just about being receptive, giving space. What that might look like in the body is being present with anything that's going on within you on a sensation level, an emotional level, a mental level, what kinds of thoughts. Just being present as that witness, that loving witness that's giving that all space. And as you allow that to move and be, and you allow that awareness to occupy, to be where you're sitting in more and more, from there, you'll have all of the inspiration and creative energy to follow through into the doing realm, right? So I'm not telling everyone to just sit back and do nothing, but what I'm saying is the shift that's happening is one from putting the doingness before the beingness, right? Which basically means the beingness never happens, to putting the beingness first. When we come from our beingness, then the doingness is coming from pure inspiration and from a space of clarity and joy and limitless possibilities. And that's when we'll begin to see, those are the branches, right? That's when we'll begin to see this flourish of branches and beautiful leaves, and from there, amazing fruits. So this is the time we're in, and this reframe I'm offering here of what the return of the Christ means. So much more than meets the eye. So much more than we've been led to believe about what that means. And it's okay for anyone to have whatever belief they have about what that means. I'm just offering my take on it, which I know will resonate with many people. So I want to get back to what that looks like on a personal level, this shift from operating from doingness first before the beingness. And so this shift is coming more from the beingness before the doingness. Another way of saying that is we're shifting more from operating from the outer to the inner, right? And as we shift from operating from the inner, from that place of our oneness of beingness, I laugh every time I say that because words are funny. And you might have different words to describe what I'm saying hello to, and that's fine. But I think you'll know what I'm saying hello to if this resonates with you. And when we operate from that inner space, that inner awareness, it's a huge transformation, because rather than operating from a place of being the effect of everything around us and kind of operating from the world's coming at us and we're reacting and we're doing and kind of juggling all this energy. The shift is, now we're operating from this beingness. We're being at cause rather than effect. We're noticing that our decisions and our perspective, our mindset is one of the very much used words nowadays. Our mindset, how we're operating from on that internal level. The perspective, the internal energy, the intentions, the way that we hold and see ourselves in relationship to everything around us. That becomes the driving factor in how we create. And instead of creating from that victim or that effect space, where there's a lot of effort, there's a lot of reaction, there's a lot of suffering, we shift to this internal space where we're creating from really our creative power as beings, as spiritual beings. And it's truly inspirational. Not only to our own lives become full of inspired wisdom, but also to those around us, right? It's like, there's something different when you see someone operating from that space. You might not be able to put words to it, but you see, there's something different about that, right? There's a level of ease, a level of peace, a level of presence and responding to life rather than reacting, and just a level of joy in the creative process that's quite unique and different. And that is because people operating from that internal space have tapped into the creative power of spirit, and they're really living from and owning that space within them, right? Rather than disowning it and living from the outside in. You're living from the inside out. So that is another fruit of the Spirit, so to speak, another way that this return of the Christ will show up and is showing up in people's lives individually. And you can tune into that within your own life and kind of get curious, and ask yourself, okay, how much am I living from that internal space? Because you probably already are in many ways. And yet there's probably also ways or areas in your life that you go back into the living from the outside or the victim or the being at effect space. And if you're just curious about that, right, let go of any judgment and just bring awareness to that, you have the opportunity to shift and transform those areas of your life as well. Those are areas where there's more fear, there's more resistance, there's more old unconscious patterns or trauma responses, and you get to shine the light of awareness and healing into those spaces and watch what kinds of powerful transformations can occur just with your awareness and your willingness and your kind of invitation to yourself to see what's possible when you just have a little willingness to shift those spaces. And then you'll be living more and more from that inner space of your inner beingness and the power that resides there. And another way that can show up in your life is in areas where you might have seen before things are so stuck that you might have even thought, this can never change. This is just the way it is, right? I'll never, be able to have this kind of relationship, or I'll never be able to find this kind of fulfilling work, or I'll never be able to, experience travel, or if you think about the areas in your life where things haven't ever changed to the point where you thought change isn't possible there, that's just the way it is, that's the cards I was dealt, or that's just what it is, those are the areas to get really curious about. And it might just be that that doesn't need to change because that's something that's serving you in your growth. But if it's an area where you're like, yeah, it's kind of an area I would like to change, but it just doesn't seem like it's possible, or it's been so difficult, or I kind of gave up, or that's not an area that I even ever thought could change. Those are places to get really curious about. And just with your intention to shine the light of awareness in there, now is the time where those are the spaces that are going to come to the surface for great change and great awakening. Because again, if it really is something that you could benefit from changing in terms of your soul's growth and development, now's the time that it's all going to happen. Because there's so much light pouring in, so much of this burst of the return of the Christ energy coming out of the surface of the soil, so to speak. So those are the areas in your life where if you just shine that light of willingness, like, okay, I would like to see what can happen if I allow change to come into this area or this aspect of my life. And then give that space to be. It might not be what you thought you needed or wanted. So there's that, again, the great surrender that can happen. This is not only a time of great awakening, but great surrender. But if we remain curious and willing and present, so much will transform. And as that transforms in each of our lives individually, so we're going to see a lot of change in people's lives individually, there is also this growing collective change that we will be seeing. We're already seeing it, right? It's just that the stage we're in now is sort of chaos and noise, and everyone's like, what the heck? On the surface, it might look pretty awful. I think a lot of people look around and see what's going on and might even go into total fear about it, like we're heading in the wrong direction. It's getting more and more control, more and more, surveillance state, or whatever perceptions we have about what's going on. And again, on the surface, that might all look scary and awful and bad. And that's the chaos of new life emerging. For new life to emerge, for the new creative potential to come to fruition, all that old stuck energy needs to kind of break up and fall apart. And in the process of breaking up and falling apart, it looks quite chaotic and it looks quite messy. And the old kind of control mechanisms are holding on for dear life, right? It's like that. The scream of, I don't want to fall apart. I don't want to go away. They're screaming, no, we won't go. But if we stay present with that and let go of any fear, right? Stay in the certainty and the trust and the knowing of this great awakening that is happening, then we're going to see some surprising and tremendous things come to fruition. And some of them might not be in our lifetime. This is the beginning of a very long, new span of growth and change. But some things we will see in our lifetime. And that's very exciting. And we get to be part of them. And how we can support the continued motion forward of new systems, of the fruits of the return of Christ consciousness, or the development and the fruiting of Christ consciousness, is remember that simple question of, am I being at cause or effect? Am I going into just being the victim of the world around me and everything's coming at me and this is a big mess and I can't do anything about it and I'm afraid and I'm isolated and I'm powerless? Or are you in a space of, oh yeah, I'm a creator here. I am co-creating this experience with humanity. And I don't have to be a victim. I can create from that space of beauty and trust and love that is within me. So that's the invitation and the opportunity here. And it's just as simple as being present and noticing, oh yeah, am I being in that space of effect or cause? Am I being in that space of victim or creator? Am I being in that space of living from out there, or am I living from within myself, from within that oneness of beingness? And then the second most important thing I will add to that is, as we're noticing and kind of reframing and making a new decision within each moment, within each day of our lives, of the, where are we living from, the internal or the external, the cause or effect. From there, the way we move forward is with forgiveness. Because every time we notice where we're at, we can get very stuck if we're not willing to forgive, if we're not willing to let go. Forgiveness just means letting go. That's all it means. And I'm bringing up forgiveness because it is a very important aspect of Christ consciousness. This return of the Christ, this return of, or this expansion of Christ consciousness and this great awakening, it's happening and it continues to grow and happen with our willingness to forgive, with our willingness to let go. So each time we remind ourselves to notice, are we living from cause or effect? Then we get to forgive, right? Because if we recognize, oh, I'm living from effect, or oh, I'm living from victim, or oh, I'm living from out there rather than within myself. If we don't forgive, then we stay in that stuck place. If we don't let it go, then that we just stay in that stuck pattern. Right? It is through our willingness to let go, our willingness to forgive, that we can make a new decision and restore ourselves to that place of living from within ourselves, from that oneness of beingness. And when we do that collectively, amazing miracles happen. Even when we just do it individually, you'll see that the key to forgiveness is willingness, and the key to miracles is forgiveness. And so in your personal life, that can look like amazing transformations and changes in how you relate to others, how you see others, what you're able to experience in terms of greater joy in whatever circumstance, what you're able to experience in terms of new creative potential. But just imagine how that amazing potential of miracles looks like when it's on a collective level as well. One thing that you may be familiar with is that saying, where two or more are gathered. The power of numbers, the power of collectively gathering, putting our minds together, so to speak, from this place of awareness, of the oneness of beingness, where folks gather, whether it's physically or just energetically, in that space of awareness with the intention and the expression of forgiveness. Huge miracles happen all around us. And I think that's so important to remember, especially if we get stuck in or start to linger in any doubt or pessimism about what might be happening in the world, or the direction we're taking, or how bad things might appear in terms of continued totalitarian types of structures or dysfunction in education systems, economic systems. All of these larger global systems are in a place of falling apart, or looking really chaotic or dysfunctional, or just scary levels of control going on. If we look at that and forget this growing light of awareness within each of us, it can look very daunting, right? And it can look like, is it even possible to make changes? And of course it is, right? And we know that change begins within each of us, and we know that beautiful saying, be the change you wish to see in the world. But even more so when we're doing that collectively, when we're doing that within our community, when we're coming together in whatever numbers, big or small, numbers of people are coming together in this awareness and this enthusiasm and this certainty and this knowingness of your freedom and your creative power, and how much miracles can happen when you come together with others too. So much is possible. Anything is possible. And to me, when I look at that, it's super exciting. This is such an exciting time to be witness to that, and witness to the beauty of humans coming together with all this creative potential. And again, forgiveness is the key, because what limits us from coming together and creating in community is when we aren't willing to forgive each other, right? We might let any kind of disagreement or personality clash or karmic kerfuffle, as I call them, stop us or limit us from moving forward. And that's where forgiveness comes in, just being willing to clarify ourselves and our boundaries and forgive others when they make a mistake, and forgive ourselves when we make a mistake, and move forward in a new light and in a new level of understanding. and from a space of mutual support and forgiveness. And then we have, again, this unlimited potential. We have just this open space for miracles and for anything new to be created. And we're going to see that more and more. We're going to see more people coming together in community to create systems that support life, that support the wellness of all, that support sustainable, easeful living, that support joyous living, creative living, that support us in just being able to be more human and less cyborg. So I laugh about this because I'm putting this talk out there on these platforms that we all find when we're on our computers and on our phones and tablets. And more there's this kind of driving force, this life of AI coming into the world that's driving us with algorithms and with the driving force of money, really, to get us all more and more plugged into these systems. And this is a time, though, that even though that drive to be part of the collective machine, living like a cyborg, is there, we can easily fall into that. I trust that most of humanity won't, because the light of awareness of the preciousness of our human connection is so palpable right now. And it's so easy to recognize that when we don't connect in our humanness, it's very sad, right? It's not joyous, right? The joy comes from being together and sharing that light that we see when we see each other's eyes, when we feel each other's presence, and that spark of light that we each hold. And when we come together, those sparks become a great, joyous inferno, blazing with creative potential and with so much beauty and so much love. So that is what I see happening, and I'm celebrating it. I see it all around me already, and I get to be just patient with the process. We all get to be patient with the process, because if you're like me, you might have moments of just wishing it could all be fully here and all the fruits growing so we can enjoy the fruits. But we're still in this joyously exciting time of great growth bursting from the soil in this spark of new life. So celebrate that with me, and thank you for being here listening to this, but also just thank you for being here on the planet right now, being yourself and grounding into your body and expressing the beauty of your soul and going along for the ride of the Great Awakening and allowing yourself to grow both within yourself as an awakening soul and out there in the world as that spark of light that you get to share with others to inspire their own growth as well. I celebrate that, and I'm again grateful for your presence, and I hope you enjoy the ride of this Great Awakening, return of the Christ consciousness, or the growth of the Christ consciousness, spreading out into the world more and more. And that doesn't mean it's all going to be perfect. This is still duality. We will still see hardship and strife and suffering, but we're going to see great change and great shift in all of our systems and all of the ways in which we're living. And that is a beautiful thing, worth celebrating, worth looking forward to, and worth being here for. So thank you very much. And I will see you next time on The Higher Vibe. Bye, everyone. Hello. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed what you saw. If you did, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. Share this with friends. Really helps us out, and we really appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you next time.